I'm just giving a quick introduction on the OSINT and some stuff that might help us for the exercise tomorrow. So it's not an in-depth side, but some stuff that could really kind of give some focus. But also kind of how previously, going on from what my previous talk was about, open source intelligence and OPSEC, and how they can really be problematic for us. So we all know what OSINT is, but OSINT from a technical aspect is pretty useless from an operational aspect. And we need to work out how to focus that and tone that. And one of the good ways of doing that is actually using ATP2-22. Does anybody know what ATP2-22 is? No, good. This is the Allied Tactical Publication Series from the US military on how to do open source intelligence and intelligence gathering exercises. ATP2-22 is counterintelligence, counterintelligence operations, technical intelligence, signal intelligence, and it goes all the way to open source, even your area, biometric enabled intelligence. All of these are being produced by the military in order to do open source attack profiles. Now, you may notice that they are unclassified. However, they have a distribution code that says only US government agencies and their contractors can use this. Under no means is this allowed to go public. And they have a fantastic security single sign-on system that says that these aren't public. Unless if you use the hacking tool Google, and then you will find all of these are published. So all of them, counterintelligence manual, as along with the open source intelligence profile tag manual. Why? Because of the disconnect. They've made it unclassified and then put in the distribution that it's unclassified, but only US military people can have it. But if it's unclassified, all military publications are automatically, by another system, published online. So it's all there anyway, including stuff they really don't want to have public. But the reason why I bring it up is when you do open source intelligence generally with people that have just come from a cyber background, the obsession is with the tools and to get as much data as possible. This isn't great because you just drown in data. And drowning in data is not helpful to achieve the objective. So one of the areas that is key is when you get all of this data is taking that raw open source data and then actually processing it into something that is usable, something that is targeted and something that is not poisoned. There is an awful lot of data out there that will poison your data because other people have similar names, similar cross-section. People are using other people's Facebook's account, they've left them logged on. It can, just a small bit of poisoned data can make you look completely somewhere else. So utilizing this method of what they're actually teaching in the manual is important. And one of the key aspects is turning that raw data into information you could use. And anybody in the military gets and understands the command process. And within that manual, within ATP22-2, it tells you how to turn your open source intelligence data into an attack profile of how you can do it. Now this does sound obvious, but we don't actually always do it. So I'm going to utilize this diagram into an attack that happened against me at Cambridge University and talk to you about how their process happened. Their objective was to provide damage to Cambridge University's website. That was their primary objective. We just want to cause pain. So I can see that their plan was to cause mass reputational damage. So they did an mmap against us. I could spot their IP, but it was rather large scope. I could then also see that they managed to collect information on a number of vulnerable web servers that they could have launched an attack against. They could have done it. But they then, within this process, started to produce a plan, and then they started to harvest credential data from a website I'm about to show you in a minute. But then it means it is a continuous process. It will always adapt and change. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Keep reviewing it. Because then they realized we don't need to attack the website. All cybersecurity people say have different usernames and passwords for all services, yet you then work for a university or a military that has single sign-on. One username, one password. They found credentials for the head of communications, which meant they could log in as a system administrator and then just change the bloody website. That's a hell of a lot easier than doing an attack, but also, once you've done it, you can then revoke admin rights. So I don't have the ability to change it, which is exactly what happened. Once they had processed all the information, the attack plan became far better than what their original plan was, because they had used that process method. And we can see that this is being used an awful lot by hackers, and definitely by state actors, but we're not utilising it. Once they did do the hack, though, we have a disconnect. And we need to do the same in OSINT. Do share this information with other people, because hackers are sharing it. But we don't. We don't tell anybody that we've been hacked, and we don't tell people why we've been hacked. But hackers will share it because you've clicked the link, or you've done the compromise. You don't want to tell anybody about it. So the chances of reinfection or re-compromise within 6 weeks is incredibly high. And you also have false confidence to think you would never do it again. Reinfection rates are huge, and if you don't think you have been reinfected, it's because you don't know you've been infected most of the time. But that process also means other people are looking at it, and they will also use the same creative process to harness their attack and take it from better to better and better. They'll always improve. We're doing open source intelligence, we need to use this mindset as well. Rather than just dumping a load of data and going, we've got 13 point something gig, I don't care about that. I want the one pager that tells me exactly everything about them and how we can find them. So using that knowledge, and I said we can always be a bit behind ourselves. This is a lovely website. Has anyone here downloaded the 1.9 billion usernames and passwords? Yeah? So you use grep and sed in order to use lots of CPU cycles. This is a service now. This is a lovely website on Tor. You can just put your either the email address in, or the domain, or you can change it for like. And I've just done a lovely one here of where that was, which was really helpful. I never remembered my password for AT&T.net, so I managed to log in and change it. But I can search for domains and it will dump. If you search for a whole domain like Cambridge, it comes back in about 6-7 seconds. And it will give me all of the credentials. But I'm using this as an example of how you can really go in OSINT. The one thing it doesn't tell you is it doesn't tell you where the breach has come from. But you can use, have I been punned? Put that same email address in. And what you really want is you want a password in here, but have I been punned to say no breach. Why? That have I been punned is definitely using this database. So why do you want it not to say? There is a security mechanism in have I been punned. It will not tell you you've been compromised, as if you search an email address, if it is of a sensitive nature. If it is Ashley Madison, alt.com, various BDSM dating websites that have been done, or some fetish websites. If you have a password and it's not on there, it's really compromising and it's blackmail material. So from an OSINT perspective, very, very good. But what you can also do on this tool to make it easier is you can reverse engineer as well. You can search for passwords. And then it will tell you the email accounts. People do use the same email password for multiple systems, and that was definitely me. If they aren't using a unique string, even ones that aren't using similar passwords, you can put a wildcard in there. Most people use a base and then just change the numbers at the end. You can then find some incredible information. Now, this is actually used quite often for intelligence services for people that have used a UK account and then they're using a mail.ru account for information sharing for paedophile rings or whatnot. Most people will try and dump it in Russia, not for cybersecurity reasons, but due to terrible relationships that will never get that data across. But you can match the two up if they're using the same password. So try and think creatively when you're doing that. There is a ridiculous amount of resources. But my primary thing is when you are doing this, don't worry about collecting so much data. Worry about the quality of the data and then harnessing that into an attack profile, even though you're not doing an attack as such. Any data is easy. Turning that data into information isn't, and that's where you need to have that objective, that command aim. But if you want some lovely reading, as I said, these are all public. Just reading the introduction will give you a fantastic guide of how to do OSINT within a more structured way. I have to admit, they're very, very good. This one is 2009. From a strategy and operational level, there's no difference. The only thing they've changed in the 2015 one and the 2018 is some links to tools that you already have anyway. But the actual attack profile, they're all online. And for open source intelligence as well, it tells you how to really write a good OSINT report in a structured way that is really helpful in an operational aspect for doing what we're doing tomorrow. So it's a good, easy download link to have a read and to take that information and become something usable. What I would say, though, is, my personal opinion is when it does come to the tools bit, don't really look at that. If there's one thing I have learned from my military time is we generally do what we were talking about, blue and blue. We protect against attacks or protect against things that we've already seen happen to us. It is far better to think more creatively and to not be tarnished. We also have a habit of stamping things and saying that everybody does the things that we do. This doesn't work. I mean, in Britain, Snapchat, fantastic. In Estonia, what's Snapchat? They don't use it. If it is, it's a British person in Estonia that is using it. It's just not popular there at all. Same with WhatsApp. That's just not used in Estonia. It's Facebook Messenger.
And yet it's huge in Brazil, for example.
Yeah. So you have to research that cultural thing. Using tools lifted from the States just to work in Australia won't work. Forgetting the tool side, that is something that you harness when you're there. But work out what is your objective, who is your target, and then slowly use that cycle to process it, and then you'll definitely find better leads to then make that profile more oomph, rather than just fluffy information data gathering, because there's loads of information on there about me, but is it relevant? Probably not. So it's just a quick introduction on there. The links, if I go straight to the last slide, you're more than happy to go to that Google link, and there's links all within that presentation to get some good information.
Question. So we talk about knowing your enemy, knowing your at an individual level. If it's hard to find out about an individual, you look at just the culture of that nation. There's sort of cultural pillars. How accurate is that, or can that be, and can that be used? Just understanding that 5 key cultural pillars.
Very well. So one of the interesting things I found, taking the US Navy, because I always like to use the US Navy, damn rebels. What is their biggest attack vector that they have for OSINT? And it is not state action. It is not anything remotely interesting in that side. It's robbery. People put online that they've just bought loads of stuff, and then they go and tell them that they're going on holiday they're going on deployment for 6 months. Well, that's the target that you go and rob the house of, and the crime isn't going to be reported for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. So their problem is that 18 robberies a month are happening to sailors due to the result of their OSINT. Whereas in Britain, that's not a thing at all. But for the local cultural side, they wouldn't think about sharing operational data, but they will say when they're leaving. So their threat is matching that. With us in Britain, I hate to say it, it's dating websites. It's quite easy to spot Tinder connections in the middle of the Atlantic. So dating is a serious problem there. But we also tell people they're not allowed to use it, so they don't report it. But the reason they can use it, though, on a ship, you have to wake up at stupid hours to do duty. Who has an alarm clock? Everybody has their phones on them to wake up in the morning. That's why I had one. We all break the rule. you're supposed to stick your phone in a Tempest room, but how else do you wake up in the morning? And do that once where I'm stuck on the bridge and you haven't relieved me, you won't do it again. So our culture changes, yeah. And from an individual perspective, you can start to piece these together. But from an operational one as well, they do go hand in hand if you get enough data sets. But you need to find just one weak link and then somebody else to verify that first leak. And then life is pretty good.
Just speaking creatively, if you do go to that Onion database, don't enter your username and then separately search on your password, because I can pretty much guarantee you that the engine behind there is correlating those two things as well.
Yeah. I definitely don't say don't trust this website. It is a hacker charity group. There is a lovely Bitcoin that you can donate to. But from my perspective, for those that have run the database, it is quite a laborious task, and the amount of it is process heavy. They have got some serious hardware behind this, really doing instant. So you can see by looking at it, they've converted it to a SQL database. So if I'm more than happy using hackers' CPU cycles to process my data rather than mine.
Kind of a two-hander. One, how confident are we that enough people have access to that Onion site that it becomes public information and not unlawful information?
Okay, from that side, it's definitely public because there's over 500,000 connections to this.
Yep, awesome.
First point, if you discover a password tomorrow for one of our persons of interest, do not attempt to log into anything with it, just write it down and report it.
Yeah.
Right? There is a clear line in the sand there. Right?
So I'd be very careful doing that.
Yeah.
When I was leaving in Australia, you can't access cloud settings, so
Yeah.
you break all this straight away.
Yeah.
That's
For that, who's participating tomorrow? All of us, right? So about half the group here. Right, Jeremy is with South Australia Police, has some experience with missing persons, has some fairly first-hand knowledge about the lawful lines that we can and can't cross. If in doubt, we'll escalate, but you can ask Jeremy first. OSINT, we've got Kieren, we've got Richard, I'm going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about. Luke and Ben have some experience in the space as well. So
I had a great statement from the head of the Met Police in London, and it was a really good way of working out if it's ethical or if it's lawful. And he said, would you tell your grandmother about this? If the answer is yes, probably lawful and probably ethical. If you know she's going to give you a judging look, then no. So get the password, stop. The minute anyone starts accessing, and we had this in one of our chats of someone saying, oh, they're really stupid. I went all the way into a power station. I went, no, you're really stupid, you utter moron. That ethical line is quite clear. You know.
Matthew, you will have 2 SA police officers on site tomorrow as well,
yes.
to have access for questions and things like that.
So that's good. So we've got an AFP or SAPL?
Just SAPL.
So
on site with us, but AFP will be online in Canberra.
it is very, very tempting in tomorrow's exercise to just trace down the rabbit hole. Do the grandma test, and if it's something that you think is going to be valuable, ask first, because the most likely response then is write it down and report it as a lead, but don't execute.
And this is where it's important to go to the plan bit, because when you get a thread, it's a thread. Don't pull at it. Keep standing back, and then once you've got a number of threads, you then decide which ones you want to go down. Don't immediately jump a thread and pull it, because you'll end up in some weird place on the internet which has got no help to anybody, and the only thing you're doing is fueling your own obsession. It doesn't make life easier. I've seen people do it with that database. They've found a unique password, they've followed it for ages and ages and ages, and then if they actually search for that password properly, it's an error in the SQL database. It's not a password, it never existed in the first place, and you've wasted 8 hours hunting for a random character string. And it actually comes up on that one.
I've actually changed over now, so I can't.
That's right. But there's one that comes up with FBOBH_7 as a password. If it's that, it's definitely a SQL error. It's just reported all over the place, left, right, and centre. So that if you follow the thread but don't tug the thread, it will just unravel.
Enumerate. But the second question was: is that Onion site just collection 1, or collection 1 through 5 anti-public?
Oh, it's all of them. It's they're really helpful. They maintain it, they patch it, they update it. It's very clean.
So we have offline. I think you set that up in the hard drive. So we've got an offline version, but you've done it online.
Well, it's back at my place because we've got both. We'll work it out.
Okay, so we've got a backup version of that. But once again, let me remind you: don't tug the thread. Okay?
Can I also stress, I did exactly the same. I spent ages setting up a database and everything for Cambridge University for my course. Just about to give the lesson, and one of the guys said, "You do know there's an app for this?" No. I didn't. Git. I wasted hours on this. But yeah, it's very well maintained, and it's actually a cleaner database than the one I've got. But it's because it's a money-making exercise. Hackers do pay for them to do it, and they're quite loyal. So, but in terms of, don't trust the website, definitely. Yeah, and make sure before you go on an Onion site, antivirus is kicking in and your firewall's doing pretty all right.
Or use Muscle.
As a quick ethical question, you've made this database available online.
Oh no,
We
online.
took this database from online and then hosted it behind firewall.
You've secured it how?
It's on a VM that doesn't have access other than SSH to us specifically, and it's firewall fairly well.
I'm a grandmother giving you disapproval.
It is a really good way that.
Okay, we're going to move to our third venue for the afternoon, and we'll have an introduction initially to the Estonia tour for 2020. Those of you interested, please do come along to that. That's then going to morph into our normal telecommunications principles lecture. It'll be about 20 minutes worth, so if you're interested in knowing more about the Estonian study tour, then please come to that. That's in 10 minutes' time, and we are in Bar Smith South 2052. If you don't know where that is, then follow someone who does.
Is that the one in the hub?
Yeah, it's downstairs in the hub. It's
So it's not near the bar?
no.